Are you looking for how to get started into acrylics? You're a complete beginner and you just don't know even what materials to get? Then you come to the right place. I'm going to show you exactly where to begin when it comes to painting with acrylics. Let's get started. Let's look at 5 steps to take to get started. Number 1, are you here for leisure or are you here for a career path? That's going to make the difference in where you want to spend your money, how you want to invest in this new step. So think about that for a minute. Are you here more for leisure? Or maybe at this point you don't even know, and that's okay. But having some idea of where your end game is going to be, or some idea of where you want it to be, it's going to be helpful in deciding what materials to buy. Number 2, materials. Now, I could go on and on about materials, so let me just give you a start into purchasing materials. My recommendation is to go to an actual art supply store in your community or go to a city that has one and find a worker and say, look, I'm totally new to acrylic painting. I want to get into it, but I'm totally new, and so I don't want professional. I don't want, the least grade anyways. At an art supply store, you're probably not going to find the craft level. At a craft supply store, you're going to find the craft paint tubes. You know what I'm talking about? Those you don't want to buy for learning acrylic paints. You're going to want to buy something like at least an artist level 2. This is the Michaels brand. This works well for my projects and it's worked really well for me. You can go higher grade than that, but I find for my own personal use, I don't necessarily need that. I buy a lot of the Liquitex basics, so that's paint. You can also buy sets, and if you can get paint on sale, or maybe somebody else has paint, like I said, in this quality, don't go with the craft, then maybe use theirs just to give it a try. Brushes, same deal. If somebody has some that are decent and decent sizes, typically you can get some good ones in sets where it has like a variety of brushes. That might be a good way to go, or just go through and find a few different sizes with a few different shapes. Like a large flat brush can be good to cover the full canvas. One with a tapered tip can be really nice for doing a variety of shapes, and I like to use those for paint night type of instruction. Because they can do so many things. So like one that's wide then comes to a taper. That one is a really nice one to have. So just a few variety of brushes. You don't need that many. You could just use these and do a really great painting with those. So that's brushes. The other thing I recommend is getting a notebook, a nice sketchbook that has thick pages, not just really thin, dollar store, sketchbook. You want one that does say for like mixed media kind of application so that you can practice in there. If the canvas is on sale, get some canvases or get some canvas boards. There's a few different things you can get. Get some, I would start with like an 8x10 size is a really good size. Don't go too small and don't go too big either. Too big, you're going to be using so many materials and you're going to need bigger brushes. And then too small, you're not really giving yourself a chance to be able to move your arm and get into it, okay? So those are like the 3 main things for paint material. Other than that, I just use, a rag, cups for my water. Make sure you're wearing paint clothes. You can get yourself an easel. This guy's on an easel right now. Those can be expensive purchases. You can get table easels, or you can just paint flat on a surface on your table. So those aren't things you need to spend much money on. And then when it comes to a paint palette, you can buy a paint palette if you want, a wooden one, a plastic one. I like to have one that has like a flat surface, and then I kind of just paint like this guy. It's a flat one. It's nice and light so that I can hold on to it easily and, move around, and I'm standing when I'm painting and all of that. So it makes it easier. So I like a flat surface, and I can kind of mix my palette with a palette knife. When you have ones that have the little dips, sometimes you can't really use a palette knife as easily on those. So I do like a larger surface. And that's kind of your main materials that you need to get started. Here's a quick extra little tip. When you first buy a brush, sometimes they're really stiff. And that's just to protect it. They have this coating on them. So you just put it in water and that goes away. Number 3, where to learn. Okay, so now you have your materials and you know why you know your purpose, but where you're going to learn. So this step could kind of go back, and hopefully you haven't bought your materials before consulting this step, because when you take a class, sometimes a class has a list of materials, or sometimes they include like a kit that you can buy, and that kind of makes it easy too. So where are you going to learn? My first recommendation would be, if you can get an in-person class in your community, go with that first. That would be a great first step, because you're going to be in person with an instructor. They can help you immediately. If you're doing online classes, that kind of thing, maybe they can, but they can't give you that like personal touch. And well, hopefully your teacher isn't painting on your painting too much. I have had teachers like that in the past, but I prefer to guide the student, but be there in person is always better, in my opinion. If you can't do that, or it's too expensive, because that can be a bit pricey, then my next suggestion is Skillshare. You can actually get 1 month free of Skillshare, and I do have classes on there. Watch them when you want. It saves your progress where you're at, and you can learn from all kinds of different teachers. And like I said, you get the first month free, and you don't have to stick with it if you don't like that kind of learning. So it's a really great way. Skillshare is project-based, so when I teach a class on there, I'm focusing on a particular project, and you're going to finish that, and then you can get feedback from me and connect with me, and I really like that. So that's kind of the second best option in my opinion, because it keeps you on a track. And that's the idea. When you first want to get started, it can be really overwhelming. Like, where do I learn? You look on the internet, there's all kinds of things, and it gets overwhelming, and then you just give up and you don't even start because it's just overwhelming. I have been there, so I understand. The third option is YouTube. So there are lots of classes you can take on YouTube. I have some Paint With Me type of classes. There's tons of stuff you can find. That's going to be the free option, but it's also going to be a little bit tougher to find the right option. So that one's a great option if you're good at finding what you're looking for. I would recommend finding just a simple piece to work on to begin with. Don't overcomplicate it. Just maybe find a few different instructors, run the first few minutes to see if that's your style, like if you're into that teaching method. And if you are, just stick with the class. Even if you're kind of like not that into it, just like stick with it. Just finish the class. Just follow that tutorial and finish it. And just by finishing that, even if it wasn't the best teacher or whatever, you're still going to be proud that you were able to accomplish something, and you're still going to learn something valid. Like, okay, I'm not really interested in following this person. Or maybe you find a connection with a teacher and you're like, yes, and then you follow them, and the world is wonderful. So those are my suggestions. If you can pay for community classes, go with that. Skillshare is a great option, and it's a subscription type of option, so you can kind of back out when you're not interested in anymore, or you're paying way less than like in-person classes. And then the third one is YouTube, and I just don't recommend just trying stuff on your own to begin with. I'm at a stage where I can do that more, but I've been painting for a long time. Still, I find like following tutorials here and there really helps me to kind of rejuvenate. Like, it's like a rejuvenation, like, oh, okay, like here's some new ideas, some new methods to try, some new techniques. So keep learning, right? Number 4, jump in. Do it scared. Stop rolling through like which, okay, like I've looked through 10 different artists to try their tutorials. No, don't go past a few. Just get started with one. Like I said, even if it's not the best one, just do it, give it a full shot, and, get that experience. You got to get that experience, get rolling with it, and that's just what you got to do. One thing you can do to get started before you attend a class is to do a swatch. Let me show you what that is. Okay, what are swatches? Swatches are when you basically paint the paint. You're testing it and you're making note of it, like a little legend for yourself. So I was doing a project where I was using a bunch of different yellows, so I was taking my different yellows, making note of them, even with the brand, to see the differences of them. So then when I go to paint, I actually know, okay, I want this kind of yellow. When it's in the tube, you can't always tell what it looks like till it's on paper. So you can do swatches on paper in a sketchbook like this, or you can do it onto a canvas, or if you have some other cool method, maybe on a poster, and then you have it in your studio or your office space and bedroom, and maybe it looks really cool. I've done the same thing with watercolors here. So if you have them laid out in a special organized fashion, and maybe you're way more organized than me, then when you buy something like these watercolors, I made a little swatch thing that matches the colors as they are in the pan. So that really helps me when I go to actually paint, because when I look at this, I'm like, what color is that? They all kind of look similar. Then I look at that, I'm like, oh, they're clearly different. So making a little swatching is a really great opportunity to try out the paints, get yourself, it's like getting your feet wet, right? You're just testing it out a little bit and giving yourself a little bit of experience with the paints, which is a lot of fun. And you get to use the brushes too, kind of see which brushes help you get, fill in little square better than other brushes. Gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect. The other fun thing that I like to do with acrylics is just do your own mixing page. So, here I was just playing around with different textures to see what a brush can do. That's what a sketchbook is for, in my opinion. Find out what it can do. Sometimes I actually paint paintings in my sketchbook. So if you get a good sketchbook, you can actually paint something in it. And I just tape the edges so that it has a nice clean edge at the end. Pull off that painter's tape, and behold, a painting within there. So you can practice in here. You can put your paint practices. So in here I have some swatches and then some that are made up. So it's like starting with a blue, and then if I mix that blue with a little bit of one color and then another, so that I get an idea of what it looks like for future reference. And it gives me practice in mixing paints. So those are some things, some tips. Another one you can do is a color wheel. So you're testing out your colors to see kind of what orange you can make with your yellow and red, what purple you can make with your red and blue, and just practicing mixing colors again. Just familiarizing yourself with your materials, and it just gives you that bit of an edge for when you first go to your very beginner paint class. You're gonna feel a little more confident knowing that you know how to use it. Okay, we're on to the last step. That's number 5. Number 5 is practice. I want you to practice. Don't stop. You just started. Practice with the same instructor for a little while. If you really didn't like them, obviously try somebody else, but don't go down that rabbit hole of trying to find a class to take. Trust me, it's a waste of time. Give it some time with an instructor, maybe a few months, and then try somebody new. My recommendation is to keep going, to practice, and that's a really great start. If you've done these 5 steps, you're really well on your way to either making this a really fun hobby, or maybe you end up finding out that this is your thing and you want to start making YouTube videos and you want to start sharing your work at markets, or maybe somebody wants to buy your work. How cool is that? You just never know where it can take you, but if you don't keep trying, then you're sure to fail. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. I hope it brought value to you, and if it did, let me know with a thumbs up and in the comments. If there are still questions you have, let me know. I'm happy to answer them, maybe in an upcoming video or maybe in your comments below. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.